Today's film is a thriller crime from 2024 titled The Order. The film opens with a Jewish podcast host named Alan exposing the nature of the fanatics and the cultists of their town. Three thugs are hearing his podcast in their car as they're driving deep into the woods. By their conversation, we find out they work for Bob, who's also a fanatic cult leader. They shoot their third fellow, Walt, in the woods for having a big mouth.
Oh, that's the problem right there, Walt.
Scenes cut to our protagonist, Detective Terry, moving to a small yet well-interlinked town in Idaho. He buys a cheap motel room to stay in. On his first day, he takes a long walk in nature, after which he goes to work and starts looking at case files to solve them. Elsewhere, the antagonist Bob and his fleet are seen robbing a bank. They hold the innocent bank teller hostage while forcing the manager to open the safe and fill their bags with all the money. The cops pull up simultaneously. One of the robbers goes out and takes the police officer under his gunpoint. When they get all the money, they run back in their car and shoot the police car's tires flat so it doesn't chase them. Bob visits his pregnant girlfriend Zilla and gives her money, which she happily takes. Back in the bureau, Terry meets Sheriff Laughlin and discusses the bank robbery that went down today. Laughlin pulls the plug on him, sharing that the robbery was conducted by a dangerous cult he doesn't want to get entangled with. Terry is unsettled by his claim, so he offers Deputy Jamie to tag along with him to uncover the mysteries of the conniving cultists. Jamie takes him to his house, where he introduces Terry to his lovely family. There, Jamie tells him about Bob and his thugs, who have become an urban legend after putting fear in the public through their robberies and intimidating tactics. He also tells Terry about the disappearance of Walt after joining the cult, as he knew Walt from school time. Meanwhile, Bob visits his den, where he pays someone to arrange more weapons for their upcoming robberies. The following evening, Bob returns to his home, revealing he has a wife named Debbie, whom he's cheating on behind her back. Later, Bob reads his son a book titled The Turner Diaries. He personally preaches the book and lives by its rules. On the contrary, Terry meets up with his old friend, Joanne Carnay, at a bar. He's called her to Idaho to help him and Jamie bust Bob's cult. The next day, Terry and Jamie interrogate the dead Walt's girlfriend about Walt's disappearance. While breaking into tears, she tells them the last she heard from Walt was when he was going away into the woods with other fanatics. Terry and Jamie head there. Upon searching the area, they come across a spot where the mud has been dug. When they dig it again with their bare hands out of curiosity, they discover Walt's corpse. Laughlin and his deputies take over the crime scene, so Terry heads to a German fanatics cult with Jamie. They interrogate their leader, Richard, about Gary and Bruce, who were last seen with Walt. Richard recognizes the two immediately and recalls them to be of corrupt nature, due to which he banished them from his cult and never heard from them again. On their way out, the leader shows them the same book called The Turner Diaries, which Bob was reading to his son earlier. The leader claims it to be a good fiction book that is taught to all the students in their cult. Scenes shift to Bob, who's recruiting people of all ages and ethnicities to grow his cult. They even perform an unusual ritual with an infant displayed on the table.
To join together with those brothers in this circle. For we are now in a full state of war and will not lay down our weapons until we have driven the enemy into the sea.
Later, Bob and his boys are seen printing counterfeit currency in one of their hideouts. Once done, Bob bids everyone farewell and returns home. On his way, he's stopped by Richard, who relays about his location getting exposed by the police. He warns Bob to end his reign of terror before the police snoop around and discover everything they've done under their noses. Bob refuses to be stomped on by the cops, so he devises an evil genius plan to get them off his tail. Meanwhile, Jamie's wife receives the Turner Diaries from someone on Jamie's behalf and lets him know they just dropped it off. Jamie runs outside to catch their glimpse, but they speed away in their car. Simultaneously, Terry, Joanne, and the FBI raid a house in Seattle where Gary was reported to be living. There, Terry finds some material in his room that confirms he's built a bomb. Back in Idaho, Bob gets their town's adult cinema rigged with a bomb. as the place is blown into pieces. All the cops head there to investigate the cause. This allows Bob and his thugs to loot a fortified truck flooded with cash. Terry somehow comes after them with Jamie and shoots at the thugs. But they get away with the money. Disappointed, Terry and Jamie turn to a bar. Joanne shows up, provoked and angry. She scolds Terry for trying to run things on his own, which is going to cost him one day. To attain peace, Terry singles himself out and goes hunting by the riverside, where Bob is secretly watching him too. Bob interacts with Terry as if they've naturally come around one another and strikes up a conversation to check out Terry's intellect and be on his good side. Days later, the Nazi cult holds a ceremony where Bob rises from the audience and provokes everyone to turn to revenge, emphasizing that they don't have much time. Back on Terry's side, he's invited to a birthday party at Jamie's house, where he continues to discuss the case they're on. The wife indirectly hints that she's afraid Terry might get her husband killed by getting him involved, but Terry assures her of the opposite. Jamie shows Terry the book received and jogs his memory from when they last saw it in the Nazi camp. The book inclines to follow the following 6 steps: recruiting, fundraising, armed revolution, domestic terror, assassination, and day of the rope. This provides Terry insights on what the cult is up to. The next day, we get to see Bob's mundane activities, such as printing fake money and testing out weapons.
There you go, you're just a kite. You don't get it, because you're just a kite. You're making some fun of something that's sacred to Christians, and you don't get it.
Oh, okay. That's it. Make it a Jew thing. Make it about Jews.
They become agitated to hear Alan's views on the fanatics, so they follow him home and shoot him dead. The next day, Terry finds out about Alan's death from Joanne, while Bob is seen teaching his son to shoot a gun. Terry goes to work and projects his frustration. He warns them the cult will outnumber them and take over the town if they refuse to enforce action. Jamie also lists down all the evil activities of the cult, including poisoning the city's water supply and numerous robberies. As he points out, the president's assassination is next on their step. The police get serious. Meanwhile, Bob starts his day by convincing Gary to buy new weapons under his ID and watches him load their trunk with them. In the bureau, Terry shouts at the sheriff to get the address of Bob's parents. Upon visiting them, Terry is told that Bob ditched them ages ago. When Terry demands to see Bob's picture, he finds out Bob's the man he encountered by the riverside. As Bob continues distributing the weapons, we see Zilla getting busted by Debbie. Debbie confronts Bob about his illegitimate affair with her, but he lies to her face and swears he would never cheat on her. Soon, the police find out about one of Bob's hideouts and his residential address. They raid the hideout. Which Bob has wiped clean and has run off. Currently, he's robbing another fortified truck with his minions. Meanwhile, Terry and the other officers raid his house, where they detain Debbie and her son. When Bob and his fleet succeed in stopping the truck and taking all the money out of it, the police arrive and open fire on them. Bob and his fleet flee immediately. Bob doesn't realize he's dropped his gun back at the crime scene, which the cops retrieve, and they try to find out whose number it is registered under. The entire department gathers to convince Terry to back off, as they're all scared of what Bob and his cult might do to them. The next day, Bob visits Zilla, who's finally given birth. Meanwhile, the cops have traced the gun number and taken Gary into custody. Terry uses means of fear and intimidation to convince Gary to pose as a mole and return to Bob. In case he refuses to comply with the cops or give information on Bob's new plan, he will shoot. Scared and, under Terry's spell, he agrees to the terms. He's dropped off at a diner, outside which Joanne and the FBI keep an eye on him. Gary is taken back to the cult by one of the members, so Joanne follows them. Terry and Jamie follow them too. Now Bob apologizes to Gary for the trouble and promises to help him. But before that, he wants to know how the cops let him go this easily. Gary lies to Bob about tricking the cops into believing his gun was stolen a while back, due to which the cops let him go without any further interrogation. When Bob walks out of there, Terry tells Jamie to call for backup and runs to catch Bob on his own. He holds Bob under his gunpoint, but the fanatics start shooting in their direction from the parking lot. Jamie shoots at the fanatics, which allows Bob to run away. While Joanne arrests the fanatics inside the place, Jamie and Terry go on a pursuit of capturing Bob, who's on the run. At one point, Bob shoots Jamie and gets to flee successfully as Terry stops the pursuit for Jamie. Unfortunately, Jamie dies. With a heavy heart, Terry and the officers deliver the news to his wife, who already feared this might happen. Left with no options, Terry confronts Debbie and threatens her to rat out Bob's location. She proudly exposes the location, knowing Bob will outsmart the cops. As the cops and the FBI head towards his hideout place, he's seen carrying the last step of his final plan. Unfortunately for Bob, his house gets surrounded by the SWAT team, and his partners are captured by them. He refuses to get out, so they throw a gas bomb inside the house and march in. Bob puts on a gas mask and mercilessly opens fire on them, which escorts them out. They end up deciding to set the house on fire to herd him out, but Bob refuses to turn himself in. Terry goes after him to persuade him into reducing his sentence if he comes out. But it doesn't work out either. The stocked ammo catches fire and starts popping, due to which Terry runs out of there. He watches Bob die in fire rather than getting captured. In the end, Terry goes hunting again, regretting that he failed to capture a fanatic as devoted and driven as Bob. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome recaps.